If you teach elementary, you should get this resource if you can. It's called Secret Stories, and it comes with all these posters and a book full of these secret stories to help kids understand why letters do what they do when they get together. So different phonetic patterns that usually we're like, oh, they just do. This gives them a reason why, and they're going to remember it for both when they're decoding words and when they're writing words. Like, for example, there's a whole story on why A and W when they're together, and kids will not forget why now. And I think it's going to be so awesome for both their reading, but honestly their writing. I'm excited for it to help them sound out those words, and when they hear those sounds, to remember. Week 2 of my Secret Stories vlog. I'm just going to hop on each day, talk about what stories introduced and why they came up and where kids noticed them. So pretty simple, but again, just trying to show how easy it is to fit this into your day. So today I finally did some reading rotations. I just printed off some little passages from ReadWorks. That way I could read with each kid and kind of gauge where they were at and go harder or lower with, text complexity if I needed to. So here's the stories that came up, and then when they came up, I told them to the whole class, that way they knew them. That way if they were going to read that passage later, they would see it and recognize it, because again, I really want them to recognize that these stories are in words, even if they just recognize it in words they already knew, because then they're going to recognize them in words that they don't know, and they can use it to decode those words then. And also, obviously, when we start getting into more writing, I want them to be able to encode and use the stories to sound out these words. So in science, we're talking about the different types of vertebrates, and my students saw these 2 words and instantly pointed out the PH story in both of them. So they pointed it out in amphibian and in metamorphosis. So not only did that story help them be able to read those words, but when we made posters today, almost all my kids could spell those words because they remembered that story was in there. So I didn't see any F's. They all remembered it was the PH. Like, look at this. I love these things. So I just want to give another example of how well they work and how well the kids remember them and point them out everywhere that they see them. We were reading this article and a student came across this word. And of course, their first instinct is to go chemical, and that's not a word. So then we referred to our stories. So I pointed out that yes, we know that CH makes the ch sound almost all the time. But remember, sometimes they want to be the conductor, so they have to make the C or a K sound. Could you try using that to see if it's a word you recognize? The student then switched the sound from the ch to find out that it's chemical, and they were able to keep reading and they had no problems. So that just shows you how you can work it in, how it's not a program on its own, it's just there for those teachable moments. I've been using it only for a week now, and seriously, my 3rd graders are obsessed. They're finding those secret stories everywhere and they want to know them all. Today, I ended up introducing OUS, and I also introduced babysitter vowels. And I can't remember last week if I talked about how I introduced 2 vowels go for a walk. The first one does a talking, but I did. And so then that one we brought up today as well. So those are the 3 that got brought up, and then I'll show you kind of some of the words and why they were used. So babysitter vowel was helpful for famous to let us know that it was going to be a long A, and then also for the end of this word for OUS. And then delicious was also another word that we needed help, and that story helped us out figuring out what that word was. Oh, I forgot one that I said, scenery. That was another word that a lot of kids were having trouble sounding out, so we also introduced this story. So the C-E-C-I-C-Y with the S sound, so that one helped us out with scenery. Then I liked how this, I didn't tell them to this, but they were just highlighting anytime like the mommy E and then 2 vowels go for a walk. So they were doing that for like seals, beach, year, people. They just were, they knew the word, they just liked that they were noticing it was in there. So I just like how they're starting to make that connection that these stories are in all these words, and it will be super helpful when they come across words that they don't know. And then I had somebody, one of my students, the word was cloud, and was just struggling because they were just going for could. They weren't trying to look at it for the sounds, they were just going for memory and trying to guess. So once we pointed or slowed down, sounded it out, and I was able to say, do you see any stories in there? They found the OU, and then they could go cloud instead of trying to guess that it was could. So again, super simple. And we actually had bus safety all morning today, so this was like a lot of our schedule got thrown off, but in that amount of time, we still were able to introduce those stories to the whole class and use them for the ones that we needed, and then find the ones that we'd already taught in words as they were reading. So super easy to do. The kids are just gonna keep finding them and using them. So can't wait to update you and see how they are used tomorrow. So see you then. All right, happy Tuesday, here with day 2 of our Secret Stories vlog for the week, just kind of telling you which stories I introduced and where they came up. So here's what I introduced today. All right, today I introduced AU, AW, the sound, and I also introduced the SHION and TION, and I'm gonna show you where these came from. I do a word of the day with my class. Today was our first day doing it, and they will be words either that I like to use a lot or that will come from our interactive real louds or in books that I read every year like Holes or The Wild Robot, just words that I know that are in there, so I introduce them, I try to use them, just tier 2 words. So today was dawdle, and it had the AW in there, so I introduced that to them. And then somebody actually, when they write their definition, noticed that the OW was in there, but they saw superhero O, so slow instead of the ow sound. So it was pretty cool that they noticed that in there as well. All right, then today we read some of these different reading A to Z books that I printed off for my groups, and the TION, SION came up because of introduction, conclusion, and there was a couple other places in here as well. I'm trying to think what other word it was. Maybe it wasn't in this one. But anyways, introduction and conclusion had it for almost all the book. Oh, on the back, connections. And this guy's still cracking me up. He, oh yeah, decorations. But he's been just kind of highlighting when he sees a story in there randomly, which is, I don't know, cracks me up. But, so yeah, again, pretty simple. Just came up in our reading this time. If a student needs it to decode the word, I ended up just telling the whole class that story then and give them the examples that we saw the word in. And then it's fun because they are starting to point them out and recognize them when they are doing their own reading. Or when I'm reading with them, they'll point it out when they're doing it. So I love that they're starting to see the stories everywhere. All right, it's Thursday. Quick update for Secret Stories and what we've done. I've introduced a few new stories. The kids continue to point them out in words in their own books and words when we're doing things, which is awesome. And we're gonna start doing more of our writing workshop next week, so I'm excited to see them use them in their writing. As for our word study, today we were sorting words based off of the sound of the Y, which they instantly said, oh, sneaky Y. It was all at the end of the word, so whether it was a long E or a long I. This is one. So yeah, they were just sorting it based off of the sound the Y was making, and they all instantly thought of sneaky Y. Just made that connection. One word that did come up today because of the stories that they knew how to decode was the word hyperventilate, and that's because of sneaky Y and the to be able to decode that and sound it out. That was pretty cool. All right, here's kind of our morning routine. They wrote down their word for today, and then we talked about how we can easily sound this out with our secret stories because we have 3 stories. We have AL, ER, and ATION, so altercation. So did our word of the day, then we do our poem of the day where we find all the secret stories in there first, and then we read it together. So we did that, and then we played the game Statues and Cards, and then it was time to go to music and gym. So today our word of the day was malicious, so we've found AL, we found us, we found CI, and then when we read it, we're like, oh, malicious, kind of has like the CI is almost making like that CH sound, and then also they found the AR in harm, and then the in purpose. But then when we got to our poem, I didn't even plan this, I can't act like I did. Delicious. They noticed how too, like the CI, so we know it's gonna be an S sound, but when it's with us, they're like, oh, when it's with us, the CIs wanted to go make the sh sound. So that's kind of cool that they noticed that on their own. But again, tons of stories within this poem. It's helping them pull those stories and get familiar looking for them, especially when they come across an unknown word. I think there's probably a lot of kids who probably wouldn't have been able to known what delicious was off the top of their head. But then when we're practicing finding those 2 stories and they can get that ending there, it's easy for them to sound at the beginning just using letter sounds and use the stories to get the end of the sound. So end of the word. Anyways, so that's been something really cool that I wish I would have started earlier, but I'm glad I am doing now. The other place that these came up this week has been when we were learning our moon phases. Obviously they know the 2 O's in moon, the PH in phases. Also in crescent, they noticed the CE. And then in gibbous, they love finding the us, the one that's feeling left out. So again, just been really cool that they're seeing these everywhere, whether it's science, math, reading, they're seeing the stories in all the words that they're coming across. And another thing I've been doing is while we're waiting in line, I always have my presentation clicker on me, which, oops, is right here. So while we're in line, waiting sometimes, I will point at one and they have to say the sound of it. And I'll just kind of go around and they say the sound that that story makes while we're waiting. So that's been kind of just a good way to review them and the sounds while we're waiting. I can't remember if I shared this or not, but I have a girl who came up to me one day and she's like, I need to know their backstory. I was like, whose backstory? And she's like, the stories, the secret stories. Like, I want to know why, like, so sneaky why. She wants to know why. Sneaky why is so sneaky. So she's making up her own backstories for the stories, which is actually kind of hilarious. So if she tells me any more what she comes up with, because that's what she's kind of determined to do, is to come up with these backstories. So I'll share those if she remembers to create these and shares.